Two people start the same job on the same Monday, earning the same $85,000 a year, paying into the same fund, inside the same plan, with the same employer writing the same match into both of their accounts. The only difference between them is one checkbox on the enrollment form, because one of them checks the box marked pre-tax and the other checks the box marked Roth. 33 years later they retire on the same Friday, and their statements print the same number down to the dollar, $1,718,588. Both of them believe they made the smart choice, and one of those two identical balances arrives with an invoice that nobody ever mailed, while the other one quietly cost more to build than either of them noticed. Stay with me, because by the end you will have one single number that settles this for your own salary, and that number is not your tax bracket. Almost nobody who argues about this online has ever calculated it. 20 years of sitting across the table from people who filled out that form without reading it has taught me that almost nobody loses this argument on the arithmetic. They lose it on one assumption they never checked. It gets made at 29, about a version of themselves they have not met yet and could not describe if you asked them to. The math here is genuinely simple, and the assumption underneath it is the part that quietly eats people alive. One quick note before the numbers start, which is that this is education rather than advice built around your situation, and every figure you are about to hear was run from scratch rather than lifted off somebody else's chart. Nothing here is rounded to make a point land harder. If you have ever stared at that enrollment screen and picked whichever option the person at the next desk picked, tap the like button, because it costs you nothing and it puts this in front of the next person standing at that exact screen. Let us make this ruthlessly fair, because most comparisons of these two accounts quietly cheat inside the first 30 seconds. Both of our people are 32 years old, both earn $85,000 a year, both live in the same city, and both sit in the same 22% federal bracket. Neither of them gets a raise the other one misses, and neither of them is smarter, luckier, or more disciplined than the other. Both contribute 12% of salary, which is $10,200 a year, and neither of them ever touches that percentage again for 33 straight years. Their employer matches 5%, $4,250 a year of money that neither of them earned or negotiated for. Every dollar goes into the same broad index fund, running at 7% a year, which is a long-run average rather than a promise. Here is the only thing separating them, and it happens on payday rather than inside the account. The pre-tax one has his $10,200 pulled out before the government ever sees it, so his take-home only falls by $7,956. The Roth one has his $10,200 pulled out after tax, so his take-home falls by the entire $10,200. That is a difference of $2,244 a year, or $187 a month, for 33 consecutive years. Hold on to that $187, because it turns out to be the entire argument. Almost every fight you have ever watched about these two accounts is really a fight about $187 a month, and almost nobody fighting has bothered to follow where it goes. For the first few years the pre-tax one looks like the obvious winner, and he looks like it in the only place where people actually check, which is his paycheck. His taxable income drops by $10,200 every April, his refund gets friendlier, and his coworkers hear about it. He can point at a real, immediate, arithmetic reason why checking that box was correct. The Roth one gets nothing at all, no deduction, no refund bump, no visible reward, and no moment where a number on a screen congratulates him for the decision he just made. He earns $85,000, hands the government its cut like everybody else, and invests whatever survives. That is the least exciting sentence in personal finance, and the reason this account loses so many arguments at barbecues. Now watch their balances, because this is where the usual comparison falls apart and this one does not. Year 5, both accounts hold $83,098. Year 10, both hold $199,648. Year 20, both hold $592,385. The same number, every single year, for 33 years, because they contributed identical dollars into identical funds and collected identical matches. Nobody is ahead, nobody is behind, and there is no dramatic crossover year where one line finally overtakes the other. That absence is the most useful fact in this entire video, because it means the thing deciding this has never once appeared on a statement. It is not growth, it is not timing, it is not fund selection, and it is not who started earlier. Two people can hold the exact same balance in the exact same fund and walk away with wildly different amounts of money. And the only place that difference lives is in the tax status of the container. So let us open the pre-tax one's container first. His $1,718,588 is 100% untaxed, and every dollar of it, contributions, and 3 decades of growth alike, gets taxed as ordinary income on the way out rather than at capital gains rates. At a 22% effective rate in retirement, $378,089 of that balance belongs to the government rather than to him. His real number is $1,340,499, which means he spent 33 years reading a statement overstated by roughly the price of a house. He is not being lied to. He simply has a silent partner in that account who never sends a bill until the very end. Now open the Roth one's container, and here is the part that almost nobody explains correctly, because his balance is not entirely Roth money. His own contributions grew into $1,213,121, and that portion is genuinely tax-free forever. His employer's match, though, sits in a pre-tax bucket, because unless your plan specifically offers a Roth match and you elect it, matching money lands on the traditional side no matter which box you checked. So the Roth one is carrying $505,467 of pre-tax money too, and the government owns 22% of that piece, exactly the way it owns 22% of the other man's entire account. His real number is $1,607,385. Nobody in this story escapes the tax code completely, and anyone telling you otherwise has never read a plan document. $266,887 is the gap between what these two identical statements are actually worth, built by nothing except a checkbox. That is the number that makes people forward videos like this one to their coworkers with 3 exclamation marks in the subject line. It is also standing alone, dishonest, and I am not going to leave it standing. Remember the $187 a month, because the pre-tax one spent 33 years with a fatter paycheck, $74,052 of extra take-home in total. If he invested every cent of that difference at the same 7%, it would have grown to $266,887. The identical number, to the dollar, which is not a coincidence and not a trick. That symmetry is plain arithmetic, and it is the single most important thing in this entire comparison. Because when your tax rate today equals your tax rate in retirement, these two accounts are mathematically, perfectly, boringly identical. Every article claiming one of them wins by hundreds of thousands of dollars has quietly deleted the side account where the difference was supposed to go. The real question was never which account is better. The real question is whether that side account exists at all, and whether the rate you are dodging today is bigger than the rate you will pay later. Everything else is decoration, and once you see it this way, you cannot unsee it. So let us handle the side account first, because that is where the theory meets an actual human being. In every plan I have ever reviewed, the extra $187 a month almost never becomes an investment. It becomes groceries, a slightly better car payment, a subscription nobody cancels, and a lifestyle that absorbs it inside 2 pay periods without anybody consciously deciding anything. If that money simply gets spent, the pre-tax one finishes 33 years behind by the entire $266,887. He never sees the loss, because it never arrived as a loss. It arrived as a slightly more comfortable decade. That is not a math failure, it is a design failure, and it is exactly why the deduction is most dangerous to the people it feels best to. Now suppose he is the rare person who genuinely does invest the difference every month without fail. He cannot invest it in a tax-free wrapper because he already used his wrapper, so it goes into an ordinary brokerage account where dividends get taxed every year and the gains get taxed at the end. Run that honestly, with a realistic drag and a 15% capital gains bill at the finish line, and his side account lands at $193,145 instead of $266,000. That leaves him $73,741 behind, at identical tax rates, with identical discipline, doing everything right. The entire remaining gap is friction, the toll you pay for holding money in a container the tax code inspects every single year. Now for the other variable, the one that genuinely decides this. Your rate then versus your rate now. He is dodging 22% today on the way in, so if he pays anything less than that on the way out, the deferral was real profit, and the whole picture flips in his favor. Here is the number I promised you. Running both paths with a fully invested side account, the break-even sits at an effective retirement tax rate of about 16%, so below 16 the pre-tax box wins, and above 16 the Roth box wins. Without the side account, that break-even collapses to 0, which means Roth wins at any tax rate above nothing whatsoever. 16% effective is a lower bar than most people assume, because effective is not the same thing as marginal. A single filer pulling $70,000 a year out of a pre-tax account pays roughly 9.5% effectively once the standard deduction has done its work. That sits comfortably under 16, And it is precisely why the deduction is not the scam the internet keeps insisting it is. But nobody retires on withdrawals alone. And this is where that estimate collapses for most people. Add a $30,000 Social Security benefit, and the shape of the problem changes. Because pre-tax withdrawals count toward the formula deciding how much of that benefit becomes taxable. Push far enough past the threshold, and up to 85% of your Social Security turns into ordinary income. For the pre-tax one pulling $70,000 a year, $25,500 of his Social Security becomes taxable, and his federal bill lands at $12,180 annually. For the Roth one pulling the same $70,000, with most of it flowing out tax-free, only $5,843 of his benefit is exposed, and his bill is $1,032. Same lifestyle, same withdrawal, same market, same fund. That is a difference of $11,148 a year, every year, for as long as they both live, which across a 25-year retirement comes to $278,700. None of it appears anywhere on the balance they spent 3 decades watching. His effective rate was never 9.5%, because Social Security dragged it to 17.4%, straight past the break-even line. Then comes the rule that finishes the job, and it only ever points in one direction. Starting at 73, pre-tax money has to come out whether you want it or not, in required minimum distributions calculated from a balance you do not control. If the pre-tax one does not need his money and leaves it untouched until then, the account grows to roughly $2,539,000 and his first forced withdrawal is $95,817. That is taxable income he never asked for, arriving in a year he may not want it, potentially in a bracket higher than any he saw while working. The Roth one is not fully exempt either, because that match bucket is still pre-tax and still forced. But his required withdrawal is $28,185 rather than $96,000. His own Roth money carries no required distribution at all, at any age, for as long as he lives. Now let me argue the other side properly, because stacking up pre-tax problems and calling it analysis is exactly what the influencers do. If you are sitting in a peak earning year at 32 or 35% and you genuinely expect to retire into a 12 or 22% world, the deferral is straight profit. You are buying a deduction at a high price and settling the debt at a low one. And that spread is real money no amount of tax-free growth can manufacture. High earners in high-tax states who plan to retire somewhere without an income tax are running that same play with an extra state-level discount stapled to it. And if you retire before Social Security begins, you get a window of low-income years where you can convert pre-tax money to Roth deliberately, at a bracket you choose, on a schedule you control. That window is one of the most valuable and least used features in the entire tax code, and it only exists if you have pre-tax money sitting there to convert. Going 100% Roth at 32 quietly hands that window back for nothing. There is also the plainest advantage of all, which is that the pre-tax deduction lowers your taxable income today, and therefore lowers everything calculated from it. Income-driven student loan payments, certain tax credits, and health insurance subsidies if you buy your own coverage all read that smaller number. And for somebody genuinely stretched right now, a lighter tax bill this month beats an optimized one in 2059. Here is where the answer stops being close though. If you are early in your career at $40,000 or $55,000, sitting in the 12% bracket, you are standing inside the lowest tax rate you will ever legally see. Paying 12 cents today to permanently protect a dollar that then compounds for 40 years is the best trade available to a beginner, and it stops being available the moment you get promoted. Roth money also buys something the spreadsheets never price, which is control. The Roth one gets to decide his own taxable income in retirement, which decides how much of his Social Security is taxed, which decides his Medicare premium tier, which decides his bracket. The pre-tax one has all of that decided for him by a divisor table published in a government booklet. Unlike a Roth IRA, a Roth 401k carries no income limit whatsoever, so you can earn $400,000 and still contribute the full amount, with no phase-out, no backdoor maneuver, and no paperwork gymnastics. Most people who believe they are locked out of Roth money are locked out of one Roth account while walking straight past another one every payday. That single misunderstanding costs high earners more than any market timing mistake I have ever seen. For anyone leaving money behind, the difference gets sharper still. Heirs inheriting pre-tax money must empty the account within 10 years under current rules, and every dollar lands as ordinary income stacked on top of whatever they already earn, usually during their highest earning decade. Heirs inheriting Roth money empty it on exactly the same schedule and owe absolutely nothing. There is one more argument, and it is the honest one, about a future nobody has written yet. National debt is above $36 trillion, and federal spending is not falling, so betting that rates stay precisely where they are for 4 decades is a position rather than a certainty. Roth money is a hedge against a tax code that does not exist yet, and hedges always cost something up front, which is precisely why so few people buy them. Now the emergency, because this is where a very popular piece of advice turns out to be wrong. At 50, 18 years in, both accounts hold $491,286, and both men suddenly need $40,000 for something life did not schedule. The pre-tax one pays a 10% early withdrawal penalty of $4,000 plus 22% income tax of $8,800, and walks away with $27,200. The Roth one does better, but not the way the internet promises, because a Roth 401k does not let you pull contributions out clean the way a Roth IRA does. Every early withdrawal comes out proportionally, part contributions and part earnings, and the earnings portion gets taxed and penalized exactly like the other man's money. His basis covers about 53% of the balance, so he keeps $33,977, better by $6,777, and still a genuinely bad day. Neither of these accounts is an emergency fund, and if the only reason you chose Roth was the flexibility story you heard somewhere, you picked the right account for the wrong reason. That flexibility belongs to a Roth IRA, which is a different account with a different rulebook, which brings me to the detail that decides more of this than anything else, and almost nobody mentions it out loud. The contribution limit is written in plain dollars, rather than in after-tax dollars, so $24,500 is $24,500 either way, but $24,500 of Roth money stays worth $24,500 forever, while the same deposit on the pre-tax side is worth about $19,000 of real, spendable money. Put differently, maxing out on the Roth side is equivalent to sheltering $31,410 pre-tax dollars, which the tax code will not otherwise permit. That is nearly $7,000 a year of extra genuine contribution, worth $821,000 across 33 years, and it is available only to people who actually hit the limit. If you max out, Roth is quietly the bigger account, and if you do not, this advantage does not exist for you at all. So here is the order that actually works, and it is not one box or the other. Step 1. Contribute enough to capture the entire employer match, in whichever flavor your plan offers, because a 5% match is an instant 100% return on the day it lands. No tax argument on earth beats free money, and nobody should be watching this while leaving match on the table. Step 2. Choose your split with one comparison instead of a feeling. Put your marginal rate today next to your most honest estimate of your effective rate in retirement, and then push that estimate upward by several points, because Social Security will do it for you anyway. If today's rate is higher by more than about 6 points, lean pre-tax. If it is equal, lower, or you genuinely have no idea, lean Roth, because Roth removes the guess entirely. Step 3. If you are past 50, understand that the catch-up rules changed underneath you while nobody was watching. The extra $8,000, or $11,250 between 60 and 63, must now be Roth money if you earned more than $150,000 last year. That is no longer a choice you make, it is a choice made for you, and it is worth knowing in advance rather than discovering it in January. One last piece of housekeeping that costs almost nothing to do. Roth money carries a 5-year clock, and rolling a Roth 401k into a Roth IRA later runs on that IRA's clock rather than on your plans. Open a Roth IRA with a single dollar in it today, even if you never fund it again, purely to start the timer running while it is still cheap. The real trap in all of this was never the pre-tax box or the Roth box. The real trap is choosing between them based on a clip, a coworker's confidence, or a headline claiming one of them always wins, when the honest answer depends entirely on 2 numbers that belong to you and to nobody else. Everything I just showed you took one afternoon and a calculator. 2 people. Same job, same fund, same match, same statement, separated by 33 years and a single checkbox. One of them keeps $266,000 more than the other, and which one it was got decided on enrollment day by an assumption neither of them wrote down. What that same fork looks like once a third account joins the picture, one with no limits and no withdrawal rules at all, is a genuinely different conversation, and the numbers over there surprise almost everybody. So the next time somebody tells you the pre-tax box always wins, or that Roth always wins, ask them the only question that actually matters. Which rate are you comparing to which rate? Because anyone who cannot answer that is not doing math. They are picking a side.